Not a matter of if, but when crisis will rock your world. I'm Roshini Rajkumar, crisis strategist, licensed attorney, and host of The Crisis Files. In each case file, we explore a real-world crisis. My crisis squad and I seek solutions. I also turn to people who are working angles from the inside to try to correct future imbalances. My guest today is Stephanie Goetz. She's a commercial pilot for the world's largest private jet company. She's turned her love of flying into a platform to improve the industry. With pilot shortages, pullbacks in hiring pilots, and the profession's lack of diversity, there's no shortage of turbulence. Stephanie is here for the case file I call Gaining Altitude. Steph, I'd really love for people to hear your flight story because you came into flying and becoming a professional pilot in a really unique way.
I did indeed, Roshini. Aviation was actually not on my radar at all growing up. I wanted to be either a professional singer, a professional tennis player. I ended up going to school for broadcast journalism and wonderfully became a broadcast journalist in news and in sports. And it was an amazing run, doing about 10 years as a newscaster, and I loved every minute of it. But at some point, my heart was seeking something else. And serendipitously, out of nowhere, back in 2014, I got a call from a flight instructor to do a story on aviation. And I thought, well, why not? Always looking for a good story to do in your back pocket to pull out for maybe a weekend feature. And I went to go do the story with him. Well, little did I know I would be flying the airplane that day. I had no idea. He throws me in the left seat. He says, here's the throttle, here's the yoke, here's how you push up the power, here are the radios, which I felt relatively comfortable with being a former broadcaster or current broadcaster at the time. And I remember us taking off and me pulling back the controls for the first time. And I literally thought, where has this been all of my life? This is absolutely incredible. I'm in love with it. So that first taste of flight and that feeling of weightlessness, I just felt completely compelled to do something to maybe get involved in aviation or somehow become a pilot. Well, I had to put that on the back burner for many, many years because I was a full-time broadcaster. I didn't have the resources or the time to do anything about it. But little by little, as I met people in the industry and I met an individual who had his own plane, I got to fly a little bit more. And little by little, I got into the aviation industry. And the second gentleman who I met after the initial flight instructor, I was able to fly with him, do some flight instruction, and get to know aviation more and more. And we started dating. He's now my husband, and he's been my flight instructor through many, many of my ratings. And so it's just been this beautiful experience of getting into something I never, ever imagined that I would be a part of. But now I'm here, and it's this fire inside of me that I'm very glad was ignited by seizing the opportunity to take that flight that one day.
I don't know if people realize that there are a lot of hours that go into becoming a professional pilot. Give us a little insight on that.
Yes, there's many, many hours. In your primary training, in aviation, you have to get a certain set of ratings to be able to even just start flying for hire professionally. And there's a many series of ratings: private pilot, instrument, then you go to commercial for single, multi-engine, and then you're getting your flight instructor rating, maybe an MEI, which is multi-engine. And then you're up to maybe a few hundred hours to finally then start maybe becoming a CFI, to flight instruct for a while, to build those hours, to then get into the jobs that fly faster aircraft, such as a business jet of some sort or a single engine turboprop like a Pilatus. And those primary flight training hours can be very daunting and exhausting. And so by the time someone gets through their initial training, they're almost quite exhausted by the end of that, but they have to keep pushing to then fly professionally or continue to build those hours. The reason, though, why the FAA, for many reasons, wants people to have hours in experience is just that. You really see so many different situations as a pilot. And there are some that people don't see even after 30,000 hours of flying. They see new things and learn new things. And so the more hours you have, the more experience, the safer that you'll be as a pilot. But it doesn't mean that it's easy starting out. With training, it can be a lot.
Right. And it can also be very expensive because there's the training, there's the flight time. This isn't an inexpensive endeavor. And the last numbers show that 94% of pilots out there are white males. And when I talk about pilots, I'm talking about professional pilots right now. So people like you who are taking other people up in some sort of commercial jet, maybe a freight jet. I mean, but they're commercially and getting paid in some way to fly. Why do you think it is that this is an industry, this is a profession that frankly is just not very diverse?
Well, I wouldn't necessarily know exactly for whatever reason it has been traditionally a white male dominated industry, but that's where it is currently right now. And what a lot of organizations, whether it's aviation nonprofits or there's a lot of companies, whether it is United, Delta, American, or private corporate companies and beyond that are doing a lot to change that number. So we have more diversity, but more importantly, so we have diversity of experience, diversity of thought. I mean, it is certainly very altruistically, it is the right thing to do to bring in all walks of life, but it also helps gain different experiences within the flight deck. So someone might see something differently, or it creates this safer experience when you have a diversity of perspective. And so however we've gotten to this point, there are many things that we can start doing. And the big things that companies are doing and that what aviation nonprofits are doing is introducing aviation to all walks of life, whether it be African American and Black, Latino, whether it is LGBTQ+, whether it's females and everyone, to say, let's bring you to the flight deck so you can experience this. And so you see that you can actually be involved in this as well. And little by little, some of these classes of young individuals coming into aviation, some reports are showing that they're even 40+% diverse populations, whether that's female or other ethnicities. And that's huge. But you touched on it a second ago. The barrier to entry is quite high as far as financially. And so that's the biggest challenge for a lot of people getting into this. And there are flight scholarships available for people. They're through AOPA, the EA.
Yeah, so I want to get into some of those organizations. So some of the organizations, and you and your husband are both instructors yourselves, and you are a commercial pilot, but groups like the National Gay Pilots Association, Sisters of the Skies, Organization of Black Aerospace Professionals. These are just a few of the organizations that are really trying to up the game in different communities. And I know you are sharing your time and training with these groups. How are you doing that? And how can the Crisis Files listeners, if they're out there and they want to get into this world, maybe take advantage of some of these opportunities?
Absolutely. So organizations such as Women in Aviation FAST, you list them as well, OBAP, NGPA, and beyond. They have many opportunities for people to apply for scholarships to get a rating, such as private pilot's license, instrument rating, multi-engine, and beyond. So there are huge opportunities for you to be able to reduce the cost of some of your training. My husband and I feel very passionately that it is what we feel with great resources comes great responsibility. And so we also feel it's a duty to give back. And so what we do is we give a multi-engine scholarship and multiple of them each year through OBAP or NGPA or Women in Aviation. We donate money or our time to be able to get those scholarships to diverse groups of pilots. And it is incredibly rewarding and fulfilling. And to see these people go on and fly beyond this, it's the greatest gift to give them their livelihood and the greatest thing in life. We also even donated an airplane to one of the organizations. So now they use it as a training aircraft for their for their students. And so there's a lot that can be done. And if people want to get more involved, they can look at different aviation nonprofits or trade organizations, how they can get involved, and maybe even how they can donate a scholarship if they have those resources, or if they need the scholarship, go online and to these websites and certainly look up these scholarships.
Well, I mean, thank you for what you're doing for the profession. I happen to be someone who loves flying. It's my dream one day to get a pilot's license. I'm a little otherwise occupied right now, but hopefully that will happen down the line.
Well, maybe someday, because you were my professor in college at the University of Minnesota in journalism, the best professor I think I've ever had. So why don't I repay that, and maybe I can flight instruct you someday.
Oh, I'm getting like a little teary-eyed. Well, yeah, so Steph and I do have a backstory. When I was first starting my business in 2006, I was adjunct faculty at the U of M, their journalism school. Steph was in my very first class. I taught 4 semesters. She was in my very first class. And you and some of your other classmates still stay in touch with me. I'm so proud of you for how far you've gone. I will take you up on those lessons, Steph.
Absolutely.
For sure. Let's talk about some of the headlines that we see day in and day out. I won't necessarily mention brands right now. I think people know there are some airlines that are really in the headlines for some terrible reasons right now. But just in general, we see things like some airlines maybe not hiring, or then there's a shortage. You're that passenger that's waiting extra delay because there's no flight crew or there's no pilot. Give us a little background on what's happening in the industry.
The biggest challenge within aviation is that there is a time of spool up for a pilot to become ready to fly. There's months of training. There's, of course, hiring, but then there's weeks and even months of training that go into getting them in the flight deck. And that training can be backlogged because simulators, which we need to train in, which simulate actually flying the aircraft in motion, though they are sometimes backed up because they have so many people that need to get trained. You also have to have flight instructors for the simulators and beyond. So there's just a lot of factors that go into it that create that backup. And there's also movement in the industry. When it's a pilot's time, which is right now, I mean, it's certainly more of a pilot industry that they can pick and choose their job more, which has definitely not always been the case. But currently we're in that situation right now. That means they might want to start somewhere and then a year later, even 6 months in, go somewhere else. And so that means they start that training time over, which means it could be several months or 3, 4, 5, even 6 months before they're actually flying on the line. Those are some of the biggest challenges that they face, but also as big airline operations, as they flex up and down, there's so many other factors that make them move a little bit more like a large ship or Titanic than just a small, more agile organization. And that's what we're seeing in the industry with how things have gone up and down.
Stephanie, I want to wind down our flight today by giving people a visual on maybe one of your favorite times in the air. Maybe you can take us, right there into that pilot seat. And what do you see when you're out there and you're flying those people in the back, but you're looking out into the sky?
I say every day, I am the luckiest woman in the world, or any pilot is, because our office views are some of the best in the world. And I don't take that for granted. Some of my favorite times flying is really early morning. I don't love getting up early, but the gift is once you get up flying and it's quiet and you're starting to see the sunrise, there is nothing that is more spectacular than that. There's also, I love night flying because it's also quiet outside. The air is a little bit more still, so there's not as many bumps or turbulence. And I think those are the really special times. The big times as well when you're flying professionally is getting people from point A to point B for something particularly special. There have been situations where we have been what's called a recovery aircraft, meaning another airplane either broke down or wasn't able to get into the airfield. We were there and we were able to bring them to where they needed to go. And it was for the loss of a loved one, or for they had to get to the hospital because someone in their family was hospitalized. Those are particularly special times because you feel like you've really accomplished the mission and done something for them beyond, bringing them just from point A to point B. It was much more than that. Where it also gets fun is flying for fun. So we do a lot of flying for fun. We do aerobatics in a military jet that we own, my husband and I. It's called an L-39 Albatross, and that is the most fun. Flying professionally is certainly a blast, but we also have to get outside that flight deck and go and explore in more of a fun and kind of relaxed sort of setting. And that's what I really like doing as well, is mixing both.
Yeah, well, and it is really important that you do have that downtime for sure, even if it's still up in the plane.
Exactly.
Well, thank you so much, Stephanie, for taking us inside the industry. Connect directly with Stephanie Goetz on Instagram at JetGirlStephanie. Today's Crisis Brief is brought to you by Mall of America. Number 1, never count yourself out. It's never too late to follow a dream. Number 2, next time you're on a plane, thank your pilot and flight crew. They spent a lot of time preparing for you. Number 3, here are some organizations you can check out for information. OBAP.org, WAI.org, and AOPA.org. An international destination for more than 30 years, the Mall of America continues to draw millions of guests from around the world. But the mall is so much more than shopping. Events, activations, and attractions continue to delight guests of all ages. They're also a strong supporter of the community and nonprofit organizations. Go to mallofamerica.com to find out more. Rate, review, and subscribe to The Crisis Files on your platform of choice. Check out our website, thecrisisfiles.com, to catch up on all case files in one easy spot. Follow us on YouTube and Instagram at The Crisis Files. I'm Roshini Rajkumar. Join me next time on The Crisis Files.